Othello, Act 1, Scene 1. Enter Rodrigo and Iago. Rodrigo, tush, tush. Never tell me. I take it much unkindly that thou, Iago, who hast had my purse, as if the strings were thine, shouldest know of this. So I'm going to pause this. So this is the beginning of a tragedy, and we start with Rodrigo, who's a side character. And he trusts Iago with money. That's what it's coming, that's what the summary is. And we know that they're already planning something. Iago, it's blood, but you'll not hear of me. If ever I did dream of such matter, abhor me. Rodrigo, thou toldst me that thou didst hold him in thy hate. I'm going to pause here again. If you notice, him is circled, and so we don't know who he is. That's really important. When are we given names, and when are we just given pronouns? Iago, despise me if I do not. 3 great ones of the city in personal suit to make me his lieutenant, off cap to him. And by the faith of man, I know my price. I am worth no worse a place. But he, as loving his own pride and purposes, evades them with a bombast circumstance, horribly stuffed with epithets of war, non-suits my mediators. For certes, he says, I have already chose my officer. And what was he? Forsooth, a great arithmetician, one Michael Cassio, a Florentine, a fellow almost damned in a fair wife, that never set a squadron in the field, nor the division of a battle knows more than a spinster, unless the bookish theoric, wherein the tongued counsel can propose, as masterly as he. Mere prattle without practice is all his soldiership. But he, sir, had the election, and I, of whom his eyes had seen the proof at Rhodes, at Cyprus, and on other grounds, Christian and heathen, must be belied and calmed by debtor and creditor. This countercaster, he in good time must his lieutenant be, and I, God bless the mark, his moorships ancient. Okay, so what is Iago talking about here? Basically, he says he knows his price. Iago says he knows his worth. And they're talking about that Iago got looked over for a promotion. He wanted to be a lieutenant to Othello. We don't know what's Othello yet. And instead of Iago being the lieutenant, Othello picked Michael Cassio, who doesn't know anything about battle. And so Iago makes a valid point. Why does Cassio get promoted above him when he has no practice in the battlefield or in war, and Iago does? So Iago's feeling really insulted. His pride is hurt. And pride is something that comes into play in this play. Okay. Rodrigo, by heaven, I rather would have been his hangman. Iago, why, there's no remedy. 'Tis the curse of service. Preferment goes by the letter and affection, and not by old gradation, where each second stood heir to the first. Now, sir, be judge yourself whether I, in any just term, am affined to love the more. So Iago's saying, why should I love the more? And we know that the more is Othello. They're using a nickname for him. I would not follow him then. Iago, oh, sir, content you. I follow him to serve my turn upon him. I'm going to pause right there because that's a euphemism for saying that Iago's going to take revenge. We cannot all be masters, nor all masters cannot be truly followed. That's another important idea. You shall mark many a duteous and knee-crooking knave that, doting on his own obsequious bondage, wears out his time, much like his master's ass, for naught but provender, and when he's old, cashiered. Whip me such honest knaves. Others there are, who, trimmed in forms and visages of duty, keep yet their hearts attending on themselves, and, throwing but shows of service on their lords, do well thrive by them. And when they have lined their coats, do themselves homage. These fellows have some soul, and such a one I do profess myself. For, sir, it is as sure as you are Rodrigo. Were I the Moor, I would not be Iago. In following him, I follow but myself. So he's ending by saying, well, not ending, there's more on the other page, that if he were Othello, he would not be Iago. And so if he were Othello, he would follow himself. It's a kind of an interesting play on words there, an idea. Heaven is my judge, not I for love and duty, but seeming so for my peculiar end. For when my outward action doth demonstrate the native act and figure of my heart in compliment extern, 'tis not long after, But I will wear my heart upon my sleeve for daws to peck at. I am not what I am. Rodrigo. What a full fortune does the thick lips owe if he can carry it to thus. Okay, there's a few interesting things going on here. Rodrigo is referring to Othello by his thick lips. That's called synecdoche. That's a type of literary device or figurative language. That's also racist. There's a lot of racism in Othello. Keep in mind that this was written a long time ago. It was not in the politically correct era, and racism is something that is pointed out. In this time period, it wouldn't be considered shocking or terrible that there is this racist language. In fact, I'd say even halfway through the 20th century, some audiences wouldn't blink or notice it. But Shakespeare definitely put this in purposefully. Why? Why are there these racist elements throughout the play? What does that show about their biases and beliefs? I'm not saying they're good, just like what do they show? Iago. Call up her father, rouse him, make after him, poison his delight. Proclaim him in the streets, incense her kinsmen, and though he in a fertile climate dwell, plague him with flies. Though that his joy be joy, yet throw such chances of vexation on it, as it may lose some color. So Iago knows that Othello just married Desdemona, or did they? That is very ambiguous as to whether or not Desdemona and Othello actually got married. The language is a little bit sexual because he says rouse him in a fertile climate. So there are sexual connotations going on there that you do need to pay attention to. Basically, Desdemona snuck out of her house to marry Othello. Supposedly, again, we don't really know yet if they got married. And so Iago wants to wake up her dad to tell her dad that he has been made a fool of and she's tricked him, and it'll cause some problems. Rodrigo. Here is her father's house. I'll call aloud. Iago. Do, with like timorous accent and dire yell, as when by night and negligence the fire is spied in populous cities. Rodrigo. What ho, Brabantio, Signor Brabantio, ho! That's her father's name. Iago. Awake, what ho, Brabantio! Thieves, thieves! Look to your house, your daughter, and your bags! Thieves, thieves! Notice, these are all images of property. In this time period, women were basically considered property. So Iago is saying, you've been, things have been stolen, there are thieves, house, daughter, and bags. The person is on either side, house and bags, right? So he's basically conflating a daughter to the equivalent of house and bags. Lovely. Enter Brabantio above at a window. Brabantio. What is the reason of this terrible summons? What is the matter here? Rodrigo. Signor, is all your family within? Iago. Are your doors locked? Brabantio. Why? Wherefore ask you this? Iago. Zounds, sir, you're robbed. For shame, put on your gown. Your heart is burst. You have lost half your soul. Even now, very now, an old black ram is tupping your white ewe. Arise, arise, awake the snorting citizens with the bell, or else the devil will make a grandsire out of you. Arise, I say. Okay, so again, Iago is saying that Brabantio has been robbed. He has lost half his soul, which normally you would think is someone's wife, not their daughter. And then he uses a sexual innuendo that is also racist, referring to Othello as an old black ram tupping your white ewe, which is having intercourse with his daughter. And it's also showing that Othello is a different race and ethnicity than Desdemona, who is white and innocent. So this is a literary motif, white versus black, dark versus light, and there's a connotation of black is bad, white is good. Are these good things? No. Is it true for these characters that black means bad and white means good? Not necessarily. And he's also calling Othello a devil. So he's already putting these ideas into Brabantio's mind that Othello is a terrible person. Brabantio. What? Have you lost your wits? Rodrigo. Most reverend signor, do you know my voice? Brabantio. Not I. What are you? Rodrigo. My name is Rodrigo. Brabantio. The worse are welcome. I have charged thee not to haunt about my doors. In honest plainness thou hast heard me say my daughter is not for thee. And now in madness, being full of supper and distempering draughts, upon malicious knavery, dost thou come to start my quiet? So we can get kind of background information that Rodrigo has wanted to marry Desdemona in the past. Brabantio said, nope, I'm not giving you my daughter. And so Brabantio thinks that Rodrigo is drunk and coming to say that he wants Desdemona again. So Brabantio is already annoyed. Rodrigo, sir, Brabantio, but thou must needs be sure. My spirit and my place have in their power to make this bitter to thee. Rodrigo, patience, good sir. Brabantio, what tellest thou me of robbing? This is Venice. My house is not a grange. So the place is really important. They're in Venice, Italy, and it's a civilized place. So looting and robbery and crazy things shouldn't happen. Rodrigo, most grave Brabantio, in simple and pure soul I come to you. Iago, zounds, sir, you are one of those that will not serve God if the devil bid you. So he's insulting his Christianity. Because we come to do you service, and you think we are ruffians. You'll have your daughter covered with a Barbary horse. You'll have your nephews neighed to you. You'll have your coursers for cousins and jennets for Germans. There are so many racist connotations and sexual innuendos in here. Your daughter covered with a Barbary horse. Okay, a Barbary horse is a black horse. And then saying that his nephews, or technically grandkids, will be different types of horses, which is a terrible thing. There's also alliteration, nephews neigh, coursers cousins, jennets Germans. So those are literary devices. Again, why would Shakespeare do that? What effect does that have when we're reading it? Brabantio, what profane wretch art thou? Iago, I am one, sir, that comes to tell you your daughter and the Moor are making the beast with two backs. This is a famous metaphor for intercourse because it's a beast with two backs. So when two people are having intercourse, that's what it looks like. And so people use this as an allusion, or people allude to this line in many works of literature and pop culture. So it's something to pay attention to. But all of it's very vulgar, and it's supposed to be upsetting and make Brabantio really angry. Brabantio, thou art a villain. Iago, you are a senator. Is that a joke that politicians are corrupt? Could be. It depends on your opinion. Brabantio, this thou shalt answer. I know thee, Rodrigo. Rodrigo, sir, I will answer anything, but I beseech you, if it be your pleasure and most wise consent, as partly I find it is, that your fair daughter, at this odd even and dull watch of the night, transported with no worse or better guard, but with a knave of common hire, a gondolier, to the gross clasps of a lascivious Moor, if this be known to you, and your allowance, we then have done you bold and saucy wrongs. But if you know not this, my manners tell me we have your wrong rebuke. Do not believe that from the sense of all civility I thus would play and trifle with your reverence. Your daughter, if you have not given her leave, I say again, hath made a gross revolt, tying her duty, beauty, wit, and fortunes in an extravagant and wheeling stranger of here and everywhere. Straight satisfy yourself. If she be in her chamber or your house, let loose on me the justice of the state for thus deluding you. Brabantio, strike on the tinder, ho! Give me a taper. Call up all my people. This accident is not unlike my dream. Belief of it oppresses me already. Light, I say, light. So Brabantio is saying, okay, I'm going to wake up everyone. And then he says this is like a dream, which means maybe that was foreshadowing for him. Keep in mind, I mentioned Freud earlier this year. He also believed in dream theory and developed it, where what we dream actually impacts or reveals to us what's going on in the day and how we are processing it and what we think about things. So I'm sure that Freud read this and maybe thought of dreams as foreboding or forbearing things. Iago, farewell, for I must leave you. It seems not meet nor wholesome to my place to be produced, as, if I stay, I shall, against the Moor. For I do know the state, however this may gall him with some check, cannot safety cast him. For he's embarked with such loud reason to the Cyprus wars, which even now stand in act, that for their souls another of his fathom they have none, to lead their business. In which regard, though I do hate him as I do hell pains, yet for necessity of present life I must show out a flag in sign of love, which is indeed but a sign, that you shall surely find him, Lead to the sagittary, the raised church, and there I will be with him. So farewell. And then he leaves. So Iago's saying, I probably shouldn't be here when all of this is going down because I do still technically work for Othello. So I'm going to leave. This means that Rodrigo, if he's wrong or anything, he's going to be the one being blamed for everything, not Iago. So he's still keeping his hands clean and himself not a suspect for anything, which is really smart. A lot of people believe that Iago could be the protagonist of this play. So that's another thing to think about. Is he or is he not? Enter Brabantio below in his nightgown with servants and torches. Brabantio, it is too true and evil. Gone she is, and what's to come of my despised time is naught but bitterness. Now, Rodrigo, where didst thou see her? O unhappy girl, with the Moor, sayest thou? Who would be a father? How didst thou know 'twas she? Oh, she deceives me past thought. What said she to you? Get more tapers. Raise all my kindred. Are they married, think you? So there were a few types of marriage in this time period. One was to get married in a church, have the banns read so people would know it was coming. Another was technically that you could kind of elope, and if you had sex, you could declare yourselves married. It's kind of interesting to research the trajectory of marriage and what made a valid marriage throughout the centuries. Rodrigo, truly I think they are. So again, we still don't know. Are they married? Are they not? Brabantio, O heaven, how got she out? O treason of the blood! Fathers, so now he's actually talking to the audience, in my opinion. From hence, trust not your daughter's mind by what you see them act. Is there not charms by which the property of youth and maidhood may be abused? Have you not read, Rodrigo, of some such thing? And that's misogyny. Basically, he's implying that women are not strong enough to know their own minds or smart enough to be independent or do their own thing. And so he's saying, fathers, it's your duty to basically keep your daughters under lock and key and control them. Rodrigo, yes, sir, I have indeed. Brabantio, call up my brother. Oh, would you had her. Some one way, some another. Do you know where we may apprehend her in the moor? So Brabantio is now saying maybe Rodrigo would have been a better husband for her. Rodrigo, I think I can discover him, if you please, to get good guard and go along with me. Brabantio, pray you lead on. At every house I'll call. I may command at most. Get weapons, ho, and raise some special officers of the night. On, good Rodrigo, I will deserve your pains. Exeunt. And so that's the end of Act 1, Scene 1, where they're going to find Desdemona.